Now, I'd say let's focus a little bit more on the visual part of our application. This is a front-end project, right? And at the moment, it doesn't look, to be honest, quite good. In reality, what happens is that usually you get designers to do this sort of optimization. Let's do it ourselves as best as we can. So we have these four areas, but the whole thing is not very appealing. There's not much that we are communicating to the user rather than textual information, but we can use colors, for example. So I thought let's take inspiration from existing real projects about this. And as in art, we want to steal as much as possible from other project or related project. There's nothing wrong with that. So I found this software called acrylic Wi-Fi analyzer. It's a desktop product. So this is not a web application, but the type of information that they are displaying is similar. So the name, oh, you guys don't see it. So it's this one. Acrylic Wi-Fi analyzer is displaying the list of Wi-Fi network available, scanning in real time, similar to what we are displaying. So we have the name, MAC address, and then I thought that this could be the center of our next focus. You see the RSSI, which is the, from what I understand, is the power of the signal, and the less this number is, the better. So -20 is good, and they are displaying in green, and then you have this yellowish feedback on this kind of network, -70, and this one, and then we go into the red, and this number becomes more negative. So we could do the same here, where we have the signal. Now we are displaying this value here, -79, but it would be nice to have some colors in this ring so that we display immediately. The user can see which are the networks which have more powerful signal compared to the other. So that we would do for sure. Other thing we could improve in general is the responsiveness. I see that when we go on the mobile view, or when we move the window on the mobile view, we get the stacked version, which is okay, but still this part um, is not resizing as it should. And in general, maybe some improvements here with the highlighting. Now it's just become white. That could be a thing. And probably in general, I'd say we could add and improve the loading status of thing. Like when we reload, nothing say that it's loading or not. So you could add a loading status, maybe a skeleton, like a shimmering effect, and a bar like at the top here where we display the loading status like a shimmering bar. Um, so yes, let's do that. It's gonna be super exciting to do this little improvement. You guys see that this is gonna become a shiny little sexy widget. Needs a little bit of love at the moment, so let's jump into it. One idea could be to add some CSS, SCSS like that, like this one, where we have a function, a CSS function. Yes, we have function in CSS, and we pass the value of the signal ranging from -15 up to -100, which is the worst, and then assigning different colors here for the fill, so that when we are here in the ring node, we can add additional classes like Wi-Fi signal, and then let's mimic, for example, that we have a strong value like that. And you can see that those guys, they become all red up there. like light red, and if we add, for example, worst, boom, they become suddenly dark red. So that's the idea. But if you have been following the philosophy of this later tutorial, you might already complain about the fact that here we have logic that we don't want. We want every component as much reusable as possible, and here we are basically inserting some pretty important business logic in here that we want to be available for maybe other parts of the system. So this is quite an important, even if it's just an if, for our domain, for our business logic. I would say that this could be reused in other part. So visually, we want to obtain something like this, but we want to move this algorithm in like the famous chest of jewels that I was talking about. This is the part that makes our application special. So we don't want to spread this sort of algorithm in the SCSS if possible. So in this case, we can. I would create a use case for this because this seems to me the right place. And then we will do something a little bit different. We are going to initialize this use case and share it with a context, as we said, as we did before, but also probably we're going to use a singleton pattern because this part will be used in every node, in every little node. So, in React, you could just create a separate function and maybe call the function, but as we are following this pattern of clean architecture and adding a little bit of classes to the mix, we're going to do it with a little bit in a different way as the mainstream suggests, and that would be using the singleton pattern and then use that. So we are kind of balancing the functional programming of the more React-ish part. So when we are dealing with the context and um, components, those will be function. But when we're moving into the backend logic, I still prefer to kind of use classes and interfaces for having a solid structure. So let's create this use case for the signals. So visually, coming back to our graph of the clean architecture, if we had to leave the things as they are here with all this logic um, in the ring node of the signals, it would be like literally squishing all this important part of the logic on the outer layer. You guys see? Maybe it was clear already, but let's see if I can make it even more clear visually. We would be literally pushing all this part like here in the UI. But what we want in reality, as we did for the other part of the system, is to move this logic somewhere here in the use case and then leave the components free from the burden of having to calculate anything, right? So let's see. So use case, we're gonna have here a new file. Let's call it evaluate signal strength use case.ts. This one is going to be a class. See if it helps. Look at that. I like when some job has been done for us. I don't know about the constructor part. Let's say that we want to pass the number as a parameter, the number of the signal, of course, like that. And then we would have something like a string return about the class of the signal. So if it's weak, if it's strength, and let's adjust this because I don't like it the way it did it 100%. Let's say if it's gonna adjust it by itself, but let's give it the structure, maybe minus 20. Minus 20 is kind of the best, so we return excellent. And then we have all the others. Let me prepare them for you. Here we go. So we go from excellent, very strong, and then fair, weak, bad, very bad. So this is what we are doing. This logic here, which was in the CSS, we moved in a use case up there. The thing as I was saying is that we want to instantiate this use case just once and then reuse it. Okay. So let's see that in action. Let's try to use it. Let's try a quick test for the moment and try to initialize this use case here, even though we said we don't want to have an instantiation of each classes, just to make it work and to spit out the right CSS class. One thing that we want to get rid of at this point, as you guys see, we moved all the logic here with the if, is this part. So we don't want this anymore. We're just going to use colors and the class names like that. Wi-Fi is complaining about something, probably there's an additional bracket or missing bracket. Yeah, there was an additional bracket. Okay, so you see it's still working here, but we're not using that function anymore. What we want to do is to instantiate that use case, which is the evaluate signal strength use case. So let's say const use case equals, or we can do something like that. We can instantiate and call the method. Even more horrible, to be honest, but we want that just to test the class name. So let's see, let's do something like that. We want to say new. And then call evaluate node RSSI. That's good. Still complaining about something. Some brackets, yeah. One here, one there. Again, this is not something to be done because we're instantiating an object for every re-render, but doesn't matter. Now we just want to have a visual quick feedback. We'll refactor that later. So let's restart. Let's reload. What happens is that they are all red, which shouldn't be the case. Let's see what's going on inside those values. And they are all undefined, so something is not going as expected. And the reason is that it's not RSSI, but it's a signal strength. So dot signal strength. Wonder why it's not auto-completing that. And boom, look at that. Boom shakalaka moment, I'd say. Look at this guy, it's working. So we have the green one, which is my one, is being displayed as light green, and the other one we can see kind of the middle ones. They are this one. This one is still mine, apparently. The 5G, but that makes sense, right? The 5G signal I think, has difficulty probably going through the walls or something. I don't know which is the reason, but this one is weaker, and then we go to the my neighbor's one are on the reddish part, orange. So good, we got it working. I'd say that we should solve the mystery why we wouldn't get to completion of this node. I was expecting that probably. Oh, here's why. The node has been passed as any, while we know that this guy would be a Wi-Fi node. So we need to pull and label this as Wi-Fi node. Let's do it straight away, right? And suddenly, I guess we will get boom. Yeah. See the power of typing and use the domain. I admit I missed that, but the process is um, to improve ourselves and the system with a solid structure available. So if we didn't have the domain layer at all, we wouldn't be able to easily plug in the type as I did now, right? So we can make mistakes, of course, but having the structure which is guiding us makes life easier in the long run, of course. In the short run, for a small project, if you have to deliver in a couple of days, maybe you wouldn't use all this pattern and types and stuff like that. But in the long run, these things helps a lot. So enough of that. We want to use the signal strength. We get it, and it's still working. I'd say awesome. This is a very good result. Next step is obviously to fix this kind of messy part. We don't want that. We want to have one instance of this use case, and we want to inject that in a more intelligent way than this brutal, very brutal instantiation and execution. So let's get to it. So here is how we are going to do it. We will instantiate the use case here, and then we add the function. Um, we will expose the function via the context. So that's how we use the context for. We share part of our business logic like that. So the nodes provider, well, this should be called nodes probably, but you guys see, evaluate signal strength would be exposed here. And specifically, we will expose this function. So then we can use it in the ring node instead of doing this ugly instantiation. We can say, give me something from the context, and at this point the auto completion kicks in. We have an additional function that we can use, evaluate signal strength, and then we can now get rid of the instantiation and just use it. Is it still working? Yes, it is. Perfect. So we can get rid also of the import, of course, Dracaris as usual. And can we improve this a little bit more? Maybe. I said maybe, because the new instantiation could be done via a factory pattern, and we could push it to use another design pattern called singleton to be sure that this is just one instance. But to be honest, in this case, we just have one nodes provider, so at the moment it's not too bad. We'll see later if we should push it a little bit more. But I'd say that for now we cleaned it, and the important part, we move this logic far away from the CSS, which was the most horrible place. But then also we moved it away. We could have been tempted to add that logic in here, like checking those things in here, but that wouldn't be the best place as well. And now we found a solution, and we separated that in a use case. So let's say we did a good job so far. Let's move on. Let's immediately see an example where we can use this code of the use case so that we see the power of structuring a program with this principle. Let's try to give some color also to the signal strength over here in the node details. So if we go into the ring node, the node details, this component over here, we can see that we have signal strength, and then we are printing the value, the numerical value. But what we can do, and now here's the interesting part, we can pull from the context the evaluate signal strength function, right? And what we can use it for is adding an additional class over here. So we would have something like that. Use string interpolation, and then we can say evaluate signal strength, similar as we did before. And then we pass the signal strength of the selected node. So selected node dot signal strength, and we can save it. At this point, we should see, let's make this thing a little bit smaller, that the signal strength span is getting, I don't know if you can see it clearly, I just enlarge it. We are getting the label very strong for this one, and this one probably is a little bit, sorry, this one would be bad. So awesome. It's a pretty good example of reusability. Imagine if we would have had to duplicate that thing again, that code all over the places in the CSS or here. This is the perfect example where you can see that having the use case separated, so we don't have the thing squished in the UI as said, but now we have a proper use case here, and it has been used by multiple UI elements. So perfect, awesome. This is another example. Now we have the class name, but obviously we want to display in a different way. In this case, we could kind of create, I'd say maybe a global CSS or common to both elements. But for now, the important part is that we are getting the conditionally this kind of name separately. This kind of names we get from the common place, excuse me. So in the CSS of the node details, we can still use those colors. So let's grab them. So let's do a quick test. In the node details, we're gonna add the CSS. Look, this is different from the other because it's not using the fill property, is the background color, because this is not an SVG, right? This part is HTML. Let's save it, and boom, we see that the color is matching. You guys can see it's not bad. Obviously, I would say that we don't have to highlight this part, but rather the inner part. So let's add an additional element. Let's call span. As you guys can see, you can do span dot and write the name of the class. Like, let's call it signal value, that, and then you press tab, so you get the class name. Let's put this inside. Okay, and this one would be, we would have to move this inside the signal value, right? So dot signal value, and then we have the background with additional class names. Okay, something needs to be fixed. Yes, of course, the class name, this one, the dynamic part needs to be added inside the new label. So let's do it. This one would be just the static version if label, while this guy would be the dynamic one with the string interpolation. Boom. And then it's complaining about something. It's gonna be probably something with the parentheses. Let me check. It's probably curly brackets missing. Yeah. Okay, look at that. Wonderful. So we're talking about this guy here, minus 26. Immediately we can see that the color white inside is not readable. So let's say set a color black for the text inside. It's just nothing but color black. Okay, or maybe something a little bit less aggressive. Okay, and maybe let's add some padding, like 5 point of padding. Sweet. How about some border radius 3 or 4? Looks like a little badge. Let's enlarge it. Sweet, look at that. This is way better visually, isn't it? And the point is we are reusing the use case of the evaluate signal strength. So that code we've just added before to the use case with the if is being reused multiple times. So when we want to change the logic, we can just change it in one place. Having said that, this could be improved a little bit more because we are kind of repeating these colors that could end up in our CSS variables. But let's leave it for later. It's not super urgent. Sweet. Let's keep improving our visual interface. I say that this white background is a little bit of a punch in the eye. So let's fix that. Let's open a ring as CSS. We can remove the background color white. Even though no white was there. Immediately we can see that as we are using kind of a black dark mode, we would like to have the text in white like that. It's a little bit better, maybe not too bold. Like that. Yes, it's not bad. This is good. Let's work probably next. Let's fix a little bit this list of devices selection, and also let's get rid of those emoji. So list of devices. Let's close everything. And let's open devices list. We have, and also the dashboard, right? Let's clean this stuff. Good. And now let's work on this. I think we should add like a little bar here on the left, probably for the selection to then be bad. And also let's change the white color with something else. Now that I'm using it a little bit more, I can see that when we go over one of these device, it's selecting it correctly. It's switching. But if I move away, he doesn't know, there's no feedback for the user to know which one was selected except this part device details. This is because here on the right, we are not switching the class name. So it's just a hover effect, but there's no mechanism to mark the selected device item here. So that needs to be done as well. This is how we are going to do it. In the device list, so this one, we can have access, we have access to the context already, device context. In here, we have the selected device, which is the one which is then used on the right part. But here, we can say, it looks like a repetition. We are asking for the selected device, but we are selecting it there. But as that is available in the context, it's good to have one official source of truth. So let's use that. Let's see what's that. CRG it. Console log, of course. It's clean. And let's select. You can see them popping on the right. So they are these: hostname, IP MAC. We could. I was thinking checking if the current one from this map loop is the same as the one for the context, then it's the selected one. So we can add a little bit of a class in there. The difference between using the hover is that when we go away with the mouse, when we move out from that area, we are still able to know which one is the selected. So that's why we are using the context and not just a hover effect. So again, string interpolation, one of the awesome new feature. Not so new, but we used to be to concatenate back in the days with the plus and stuff. So auto suggestion is suggesting select the device host name, which, yeah, it's not bad. Probably instead of the host name, you might be using the MAC address. How about that? Device dot MAC. Cool. So if we select, now we are adding an additional class. Let's see if it's true. Yes, it is. Boom shakalaka, selected. So, and obviously it's toggling with the others. Next step is the easy one, is just adding the CSS part of it. So let's do it, maybe highlight it in a better color and with a little bar. I have updated the CSS a little bit. So what we have is that we have the device item as a position relative, and inside we have an absolute little bar, this yellowish bar on the left. Also, I've removed the hover because at this point, what we are selecting is enough, isn't enough condition, as it's switching very fast between one to the other, because these are all loaded, let's say, in one batch. What we have is that we have a new background here, like the background, this gray, dark gray one. And the usability improvement is that if we move the mouse away, I don't know if you guys can see the mouse from, maybe let's move it here, like that. So, oops, you can see some duplicate. Okay, perfect. So with the mouse, when I move over, this is selecting, and when I move away like that, the mouse, it's keeping the selection because it's using the selected context. And when I move again, so this is a little bit better for sure. Let's move on. Now the elephant in the room, I say, is the loading feedback for the user. So it's really terrible at the moment, the way I managed the loading flags. So let's improve it. We need to display to the user some sort of loading state as well as that bar that I was talking about. So let's do it. It's going to be exciting.